Yeah, but I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit! For this? For the pod? Again?
They didn't like my comments on Paige Becker's.
No way!
I didn't even say anything bad.
WNBA just made their biggest mistake yet, and it's about to cost them everything. In a shocking revelation that's sending shockwaves through the basketball world, Sophie Cunningham has just exposed what might be the most corrupt fine system in professional sports history. What started as simple podcast commentary has now exploded into a full-blown scandal that has found
something seriously wrong with how the W enforces their rules. And I know there's already been a big emphasis on referee inconsistencies, but at the end of the day, the quality of referees is on the WNBA too. Because again, I have no idea where the line is. Because on one hand, I kind of get it. It's normal for a league to fine you if you're going to talk bad about the league or the players in the league. Because that happens all the time in the NBA, NFL, and so on. But on the other hand, why does the league not care about its image when players are standing
calling for heads to roll and questioning everything they thought they knew about women's basketball's Premier League? This isn't just another player complaint. This is a systematic takedown of an organization that has completely lost control, and Sophie Cunningham is the woman brave enough to pull back the curtain on their dirty secrets. The numbers are staggering, the evidence is damning, and the WNBA's response? Pure panic mode. Sophie Cunningham stepped up to her microphone for what should have been just another episode of her podcast, Show Me Something, but what came out of her mouth next would change everything. I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA, she declared, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had finally reached her breaking point.
standing over and cursing out their opponents on the court. Like, where was the enforcement here? Or where was it here? Or where was it when the whole entire league was bullying your star player? And this stuff is happening all the time in the WNBA, but why is it only called on occasion? Which is why finding Sophie Cunningham every time she has a podcast seems kind of crazy, because the WNBA obviously chooses when.
This wasn't just about money. This was about something far more sinister happening behind the scenes of women's basketball. The latest fine? For simply mentioning that Paige Buchers seemed to get favorable whistle calls. Not attacking her character, not questioning her talent, just making an observation that millions of fans make every single game. Yet somehow, this basic commentary crossed a line that the WNBA decided was worth financial punishment. They didn't like my comments on Paige Buchers, Cunningham revealed, the disbelief evident in her voice. I didn't even say anything bad. But here's where this story gets absolutely insane.
But more importantly, she stated she got another fine for actually talking about Paige Buchers. Now, we all ultimately know what happened last time. She had her podcast. She let it be known that Paige Buchers got that blue blood whistle, bro. And make a long story short, she stated the WNBA fined her for that. And she spoke about Bree Hartley. She also talked about Caitlin Clark rehab. But guys, it's unfortunate that she will be out for the
This wasn't Sophie's first rodeo with the WNBA fine machine. In fact, she's been building quite the collection of penalties that reads like a greatest hits album of league overreach. Her first major fine came when she dared to suggest that Paige Buchers got what she called blue blood whistle treatment during games. The WNBA's response? A swift financial slap across the face that sent a clear message to every other player watching. Then came the TikTok incident that proved just how far the league was willing to go to control their narrative. Sophie posted a harmless lip-sync video that happened to reference referees.
Cunningham, every podcast episode, they have fined her, because Sophie Cunningham has been fined, I'm not joking. She's been fined for a TikTok. She's been fined now, I think, for the third time for a podcast. I think Sophie Cunningham might...
Boom. Another $500 fine landed in her lap. $500 for a social media post that wouldn't have raised an eyebrow in any other professional sport. The message was becoming crystal clear. Speak about the league in any way they don't approve of, and your wallet will feel it. The pattern continued with her podcast commentary about Bree Hartley and discussions around Caitlin Clark's rehabilitation situation. Each episode seemed to trigger the league's fine alarm system like clockwork. What emerged was a disturbing picture of an organization so obsessed with controlling their image that they were willing to financially punish their own employees for basic observations that any reasonable person could make. But Sophie Cunningham wasn't just going to roll over and take it. Instead,
players. Nobody's going to watch this if you're not protecting your star player. You're not protecting your players, period. But particularly your star players. No one's going to watch this. People are watching it because of Caitlin Clark, and then even more because of Sophie Cunningham. And if you're going to just hang them out to dry, then, good. Nobody's going to watch this anymore because they don't protect their players.
she did something that sent shockwaves through the basketball community. She embraced her role as the league's most authentic voice. In a sport desperate for personality and genuine connection with fans, Cunningham transformed herself into something the WNBA never saw coming. A truth-telling warrior who refused to be silenced by their intimidation tactics. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Here was a player who had become one of the top 5 most talked about personalities in the entire WNBA, not just for her on-court performance, but for her willingness to say what everyone else was thinking. Fans began celebrating her as an alpha, strong, beautiful, spicy villain who seemed to relish her new role as the league's biggest headache. And the more the WNBA tried to silence
Protect their players. It's a worthless organization. They have no idea how to protect their players. But, oh man, they're going to bitch and moan. Well, you better pay us the money. For what? You can't even protect your star players that draw the eyeballs. Now nobody's watching. Nobody's going to watch to see the star players sitting out with injuries because of poor treatment and poor officiating on the side.
the louder her voice became. The financial details of this systematic campaign are absolutely mind-boggling. We're talking about fines ranging from $500 for social media posts to $1,500 for podcast commentary, with additional undisclosed penalties for simply noting officiating patterns that viewers can see with their own eyes. But here's what makes this even more outrageous. The WNBA's process for delivering these fines reads like something out of a workplace harassment manual. According to Cunningham's own account, the league doesn't even have the courtesy to fine players directly. Instead, they email the team's general manager, who then has to pull the player aside, often in front of teammates, to deliver the bad news. Imagine being so...
Officially, 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit! For this? For the pod? Again?
They didn't like my comments on Paige Becker's.
No way.
I didn't even say anything bad.
On the whistle, on the quick whistle.
Yeah, but like, why? Like,
If we want to talk about Paige, here's a good question.
They fined her for saying Paige Beckers has a good whistle. Like, I kid you.
Cunningham, walking into practice and having your GM approach you with that dreaded look. Come here, Sophie. I have to talk to you, followed by the inevitable. Hey, they're going to fine you again. The psychological impact of this system cannot be understated. This isn't just about money. It's about creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty where players never know when their next honest observation might cost them hundreds or thousands of dollars. Cunningham herself described the frustration perfectly, pointing out that she had even credited the referees in her comments, acknowledging that their job was difficult and that she wouldn't be good at it herself. Yet, somehow, even this balanced perspective was deemed fine-worthy by the league office. What makes this entire situation even more infuriating is the glaring inconsistency in how these fines are applied.
Fined? Do they put like verbatim, like quote here, like this is why you're being fined and this is why it's this much? Or is it like, hey, quit talking shit on us, Venmo us like $1,500?
What happens is they email our GM, and she pulls me aside and she goes, "Come here, Soph, I have to talk to you." And this was in like front of everybody. And I was like, "What did I do now?" And she just smiled and she goes, "Hey, they're going to fine you again." They're like, I was like, I even told them, I even credited them that their job was hard. I did say that. And I said that I would not be good at it. I did say that. Like, look at the whole picture. What are we doing?
The WNBA has created a system where some players can say virtually anything without consequences, while others face financial punishment for the most basic observations. The selective enforcement is so obvious that it's become a running joke among fans and players alike. Angel Reese can reference special whistle treatment for Caitlin Clark in a public press conference and face zero consequences. Kelsey Plum can literally stop entire press conferences to complain about referees without seeing a single fine notice. Coaches can go ballistic on officials during games, screaming and gesturing wildly, without facing the same financial penalties that Sophie Cunningham receives for measured podcast commentary.
About getting fined, basically saying that she thinks it's laughable and that the league probably has bigger issues they should be focusing on. Now, WNBA officiating has faced major scrutiny all season long from some of the league's biggest stars and coaches. You can find a ton of articles about it online where they're all calling for more consistency. One of the more quotable examples came from Angel Reese after the Chicago Sky lost to the Minnesota Lynx on July 6th. Reese said that the officiating has to be fixed. She said, "I don't give a you-know-what if I get fined because that stuff is cheap and I'm tired of this stuff." You get the point. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert addressed the officiating ahead of the All-Star game last weekend. She said that it is something that the league is continuing to work on and that they are on it. Engelbert mentioned that
the message this sends is absolutely devastating to the league's credibility. We're watching an organization that picks and chooses when to enforce their own rules based on factors that seem to have nothing to do with the actual content of the comments. It's selective justice at its worst, and it's happening in plain sight for everyone to see. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of this entire scandal is what it reveals about the WNBA's fundamental misunderstanding of modern sports media and fan engagement. Here, they have Sophie Cunningham, who has organically built herself into one of the most engaging personalities in women's basketball. Her podcast generates massive social media engagement, creates appointment listening for WNBA fans.
She'll happily pay those fines. I think they're only fining like $200 or something. It's something crazy. Like Sophie Cunningham is making millions this year. Players don't get fined for speaking on one another, but every single player in the history of pro basketball has criticised officiating and fined for it. No, she keeps doing the same thing, getting fined for it. She literally said Paige is a good whistle. That is what she said. She said Paige, the Paige fans, my God, Paige fans are fucking nutjobs.
It's exactly the kind of authentic content that leagues dream of having from their athletes. Instead of embracing this organic marketing goldmine, the WNBA has chosen to treat Cunningham like a problem to be managed rather than an asset to be celebrated. They're sitting on exactly what every sports league wants, an authentic voice from inside the organization who can connect with fans in ways that no corporate marketing campaign ever could. Yet, their response has been to create financial disincentives for the very honesty that makes her content so compelling. The business stupidity of this approach is staggering. In an era where authentic content drives fan engagement more than any traditional marketing method, the WNBA is actively discouraging their players from being authentic. They're essentially telling their most compelling personalities to shut up and stick to sanitized, corporate-approved talking points that nobody wants to hear. The fan response to this systematic silencing campaign has been swift and unforgiving. Social media has exploded with support for Cunningham, with comments like, "This league is so messed up. Sophie, keep calling out their nonsense," flooding every platform. Fans aren't just supporting Cunningham. They're actively turning against a league they now see as fundamentally dishonest and controlling. What's particularly telling is how fans are celebrating Sophie more for her willingness to speak truth than for her actual basketball.
She literally, when I tell you, y'all, I literally feel like they are just coming for her because I feel like she should be able to say what she wants to say on her podcast. But that's just me. That's just how I feel. Then they came and then it came an earlier $500 penalty. I guess for a TikTok video, she was mocking the referees and lip syncing. That was funny. So now I got a question for y'all. Do you think that she should be able to say what she wants on her own podcast? Or do you feel like, she should just shut it down and, stop bothering them?
When authentic commentary becomes more noteworthy than athletic achievement, you know something has gone seriously wrong with your organization's priorities. The WNBA has managed to create a situation where their most engaging content comes from a player criticizing the league rather than promoting it. The broader implications of this scandal extend far beyond Sophie Cunningham's individual situation. Multiple sources have indicated that other players share her concerns about officiating consistency and league operations, but they're too afraid to speak publicly because they've seen what happens to those who do. The WNBA has successfully created a culture of fear around honest discourse, where players self-censor rather than face financial punishment for basic observations. This culture of intimidation is perhaps the most damaging aspect of the entire scandal. When players are afraid to speak honestly about their own league, you've created an environment that's toxic not just for individual expression, but for the entire sport's ability to grow and improve. How can a league address real problems when they financially incentivize their own employees to stay quiet about those problems? The timing of this scandal couldn't be worse for the WNBA. Just as women's basketball is experiencing unprecedented growth and mainstream attention, largely driven by
in a public press conference, and it's selective fining. That's the problem. Like, Kelsey Plum has not been fined this year, and Kelsey Plum has literally just stopped entire press conferences to complain about the referees. Apparently, Stephanie White didn't get fined when Marina Mabrey knocked Caitlin on her ass, and then Sophie Cunningham took down JC Sheldon. Apparently, Stephanie White didn't get, and Mazian did not get fined for both of them going mad.
Stars like Caitlin Clark and the authentic personalities that fans are connecting with. The league office is actively working to silence those very personalities. They're shooting themselves in the foot just as they're finally gaining the cultural relevance they've desperately wanted for decades. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has acknowledged that officiating consistency is something the league is working on, yet players who make similar observations face immediate financial consequences. The disconnect between public acknowledgement of problems and private punishment of those who discuss them reveals an organization that's completely lost touch with basic principles of fairness and transparency. The tragic irony in all of this is that the WNBA had everything they could have asked for in Sophie Cunningham's authentic voice. Here was engaging content that drove real fan interest, commentary that generated meaningful discussion about their product, and a personality that connected with audiences in ways that scripted marketing never could. Instead of supporting this organic connection between players and fans, they chose to treat it as a threat to be managed through financial punishment. What we're witnessing through Sophie Cunningham's treatment isn't just about fines or commentary. It's about whether the WNBA wants to be an organization that embraces authentic voices or one that silences them. The choice they're making speaks volumes about their priorities, and fans are taking notice of exactly what those priorities appear to be. The question now isn't whether Sophie Cunningham will continue speaking her truth. She's already proven she'll absorb fine after fine to do exactly that. The real question is whether the WNBA can survive the reputational damage they're inflicting on themselves by trying to silence their most authentic voice, or if this scandal will be the tipping point that forces them to confront their own broken system before it's too late.